Hello, my name is Joshua Chang Park, and today I'll be talking about my project, Automated Supraglacial Lake Detection with NDWI and Unit Segmentation. So I have a background in geophysical sciences, and I've always been interested in various glaciological problems. So for this project, I wanted to leverage various computational tools to reveal insights in our most vulnerable regions of this Earth. This is a big project, and it's still a work in progress, but mainly it constitutes two big portions. The first part is the automated portion, where I'm trying to build an automated pipeline that combines different georeference systems to create a map that a computer can understand. And the second part is where I utilize those maps to train a unit segmentation machine learning model so that a machine can actively detect various superglacial lake formations in Greenland ice sheets or Antarctic ice sheets. Since it takes a lot of time to actually bring in the data and run a model and also run a machine learning model demo, I won't be doing a live demo in this presentation, but I have included the results that I found and I've ran in my local machine. So I hope that can be a reference for you. And if not, I've also included a GitHub repo link that you could use as a reference to check out my code. So I want to talk a little bit about motivation, but before I do so, the figure on the right is from a Nature Communications paper published by Johnny Ryan and collaborators of many different examples of meltwater ponding in the southwest Greenland region. Superglacial lakes matter because anthropogenic climate forcing has been causing more surface melt in our polar regions lately. And these lakes influence meltwater routing, affect hydrofracture and ice shelf instability, and they function as one of many key indicators of warming patterns in Greenland and Antarctica. So for my project, I focused on this region, Jakobshavn Glacier of southwest Greenland, because it's one of the fastest moving glaciers on Earth, rich public archive of Sentinel satellite imagery, and it also has strong seasonality for melt pond formation. So the project can be mainly divided into these four different portions. First, I developed a reproducible pipeline where I combined Sentinel-2 L2A, lower atmosphere satellite imagery, with Arctic DEM data, which stands for Digital Elevation Model, to create a preliminary mask or a map that a computer can understand. And then I prepared a training data set where I divided these maps into different little digestible size of patches that we can feed into a machine learning model. Then I trained a unit segmentation model, a preliminary one, where I trained approximately 2,800 tiles with the size of 256 to 256 pixels in order to create a model that can have binary lake mask prediction as a result. And the last portion is validate and visualize the segmentation results, where I created some figures that the machine produced for me, where we can see how the machine did in terms of predicting whether there is a lake or not. Hopefully in the future, I can expand this and scale it up, where I can also check cross-temporal generalizations across different regions and across different temporal scales as well. So for data sources, I have two primary data sources, as mentioned before, from Copernicus, which is part of the EU space program, and the Polar Geospatial Center based in University of Minnesota. And this is the automated pipeline portion, since I'm focusing on extracting CRS, standing for Coordinate Reference System. And based on that, I locate target DEM, and I reproject that DEM into a form that matches the Sentinel and clip them so that it's ready for a unit segmentation model. A little bit about the science behind it. NDWI stands for Normalized Difference Water Index. So basically, we are tinkering with the green band and the near infrared band to create an index where it shows where this might possibly be water, a melt pond. And another unique thing about this process is that The elevation data, represented in the Arctic DEM, uses a different CRS from Sentinel. Sentinel uses UTM zone, while the DEM uses polar stereographic north. So part of this automation process was to make sure that I have a satellite tile that I want to look at. So I'm gonna have the machine give me the target digital elevation model tile that corresponds to Sentinel, reproject them, clip them together so that I can train them. So it's a big process for sure. This pipeline diagram is basically summarizing all that process. I'm using different task helpers and load bands pi to do the NDWI thresholding in the first place. And then, as I mentioned, one of the task helpers, build VRT, standing for virtual raster, helps me detect and sort through the various DEM mosaic to see what DEM would be suitable for my target region. And the main Python code clips them together to create the NDWI mask with some ground truth binary mask. After that process is done, I generate the tiles where I use maketiles.py, dataset.py, and I train with a UNet model. And as a result, I had some sort of working UNet lakes path model that the computer generated alongside with a visualization code to see if my code worked correctly. So the code architecture in two parts. The first part is the automation portion. They're highlighted in red on the left hand. Just to go over them really quickly, CRS utils, DEM utils, and geometry utils, as mentioned before, primarily handles these reprojection processes. So CRS utils handles coordinate reference systems, detection, validation, and conversions. DEM utils load Arctic DEM tiles, reproject them to match Sentinel CRS. Geometry utils make sure that these files, these polygons, have a good spatial overlap between the two different data sets. Sentinel load bands .py is the actual computational portion, the math portion, where it loads the band, the green and near infrared bands, and computes NDWI with proper raster profiles. And the VRT code builds a virtual raster mosaic of DEM tiles for fast memory efficient reprojecting and cropping. And I'll show you an example of what this DEM tile alignment looks like in the next slide, or in a couple of slides. And the main pi is the top level script orchestrating the full pipeline where it loads data, generates masks, creates tiles, and runs interference. Here the tiles, what I mean by tiles is the preliminary masks. And the second portion of the code architecture is the unit architecture, where check tiles verifies that NDW image patches and corresponding masks were successfully generated. Make tiles first splits full scene imagery and mask into uniformly sized training tiles used for unit segmentation, and then converts them and stores them in dataset pi, where it defines the PyTorch dataset class for loading NDWI tiles, masks, and DM channels during training. And the train code and the unit code basically defines the unit architecture and runs the full training loop for the unit model. And as a result, we produce the unit lakes path, where it saves the trained model weights for inference and future fine-tuning, and the visualization code that shows as an image a side-by-side comparison of prediction versus ground truth. As you can see in my Git repo, the source data is not included because save files or other DEM files can be big. Even the clipped ones can be really big, but I have notated in my code how to download them and how to run them based on the file format. So NDWI generation, that's the first portion. As you can see on the left hand, you see some DEM tiles being aligned, and based on that, I projected some NDWI maps. And on the right-hand side, rightmost side, is a binary map where you can see which part lights up as true for lake. So the NDWI highlights surface meltwater by contrasting green and near-infrared bands in Sentinel-2 imagery. And positive NDWI values correspond to liquid water, while snow, ice, and rock produce near zero or negative values. And this allows us to generate an initial binary lake mask through simple thresholding. So the ground truth is generated through simple thresholding, which has its limitations, but for the scope of this project was the ground truth that I used. And as you can see, some DEM tile alignment had some stitching issues, and there seems to be a little bit of artifact due to differences in acquisition date and some reconstruction, but I hope to further fix that in the later version of this project. To look at the training tiles codes, I added a little snippet of my code. I broke down full NDWI scene into manageable patches, and the code checks that the NDWI map and binary masks align, clips NDWI into reasonable range, then slides a pixel window, a 256 pixel window across the image. So it's automating that process and clipping them, and each tile mask pair is saved as an MPC file, which allows PyTorch to stream files efficiently. So this is the portion where a visual data that is accessible to the human eye finally becomes a format that a computer can understand and train itself. Unit architecture, this is a snippet of the unit architecture code. As you can see, it's a very preliminary, compact unit code where it has an encoder and a decoder. And the compact unit actually has an encoder that progressively downsamples the feature maps using conv2d and relu. So the conv2d layers learn spatial filters that detect patterns like edges, textures, or melt pond boundaries. It basically just traces whatever is different and whatever is flagged. And the ReLU, the rectified linear unit, introduces nonlinearity so the network can represent complex shapes. And as a result, the final layer outputs a one-channel probability map indicating lake versus non-lake. So this is the final, the result, a snippet of a result. I only produced a couple of tiles just for testing purposes. To visualize, but I ran the full test across the 2,800 tiles, where I ran 3 epoch runs across 2,833 tiles, where I allocated 2,550 for training and 283 for validation. And as you can see across these epochs, I see a steady decrease in training loss, along with some stable validation loss. So the unit correctly captures lake outlines. Not everything. If you see on the third row panel, you see that some predictions fail to detect some portion of the true masks of what I fed in. But across the board, it seems to be doing pretty well. Maybe a little bit too well, and I'm a little bit worried that the grayscale inputs might have artificially inflated prediction quality, and this can be augmented further by feeding in better ground truth data, which is always a problem and always a ongoing question in glaciological research. So discussion and future work. Model evaluation and robustness. So the current training achieves stable convergence over 3 epochs, but I want to expand evaluation using F1 score, precision and recall, IOU, and per tile confusion matrices. It's an ongoing and learning process. And I also want to test cross-temporal generalizations on other Sentinel-2 dates to evaluate seasonal robustness. I did include approximately 3 to 5 years of summer melt data, 3 per each year, to feed in and generate these original tiles, but it can always be expanded across various regional and temporal scales. I also hope to improve ground truth quality by refining lake masks using multi-step thresholding, by conducting manual QA on subset of tiles, and maybe incorporating higher resolution images like drones. I also think there is room for improvement in architecture enhancement and scaling up, where instead of having a binary classification of like water and ice, I could incorporate multi-class segmentation such as snow fern, wet snow, crevasse terrain, because these actual landscapes are a lot more complex than just ice and water. And I hope to also expand this research across Antarctic ice shelves, such as George VI Shelf or Amory Shelf, and Antarctic Peninsula, where a lot of melt is happening. So this preliminary model can be theoretically, as long as we have the right satellite image tile, can automate the process of getting and retrieving elevation model, reprojecting them, clipping them, and training them in one go. There has to be more tweaking in its actual mechanisms and um, enhancing predictions that are aligned to ground truth. But I think it's an exciting model that can really combine and leverage the computer vision and machine learning techniques into research that can help reveal insights about our current polar regions. Thank you so much for listening. This is my email and my GitHub repo for this project. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer those questions. I would love to hear from you. At the end of the slide, I've included a picture of James Balog's extreme ice survey photography of our changing glacial landscapes. Thank you for listening.